Hello guys, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I would like us to talk about the government ticket, which is officially known as the Government Competency Certificate or a GCC. I want us to cover what is a GCC. I also want us to cover why is it needed and how do you go about getting it and everything in between. I've been getting a number of texts on LinkedIn from people interested to know more about the GCC, especially the application process, but I will cover from the beginning and I will try to cover as much as possible in this short video. Okay, let's get to it. What is a GCC? A GCC, or a Government Competency Certificate, or simply called a Certificate of Competency, is a type of a certification for electrical and mechanical engineers in South Africa. So it is a certification that enables that electrical or mechanical engineer to be appointed as a supervisor of machinery in either industry, factories, or mines. So that is what it is. It is just a certification that you do in addition to your qualification. Let's say you've got a degree, you've got a diploma, or whatever engineering qualification you have, then you add this GCC certification, which enables you or makes you a competent person who is authorized to supervise machinery in a mining environment or factory environment. Okay, let's talk about why is it needed. So in South Africa, we've got two main important laws. The first one is the Occupational Health and Safety Act of South Africa. It is a law that governs industry. A lot of companies in South Africa have, if not all, have to comply, have to run their business, have to conduct whatever activities they conduct in line with that law. And then for mines, there is a law called the Mine Health and Safety Act. The Mine Health and Safety Act was passed in 1996, Occupational Health and Safety Act in 1993. There are similarities between the two laws because the main purpose for both laws is to ensure that employees know what to do at work, but also that employers perform their duties, take all reasonable steps to make sure that employees are safe. So the purpose of these laws is to make sure that people go to work safe, they come home safe. So there are many sub-parts of that Occupational Health and Safety Act and also the Mine Health and Safety Act. But the part that we're going to talk about today is the one that affects or that has to do with the GCC. So in the Occupational Health and Safety Act of South Africa, the Act states that the employer must provide a safe work environment. And part of providing a safe work environment, he must appoint people to be responsible for that. Even though the employer is ultimately accountable for whatever happens in the workplace, he can delegate some of their responsibilities to ensure that the work environment is safe. So the responsibility of ensuring that equipment, machinery is safe is delegated to an engineer, because engineers are people who work with machines. There may be other parts of the law or some parts of the law that have to do to making sure that people are safe, but the one that has to do with machinery, that one has to be delegated to a competent engineer. Okay. So that is why it is needed. It's coming from there. It's the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Part of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, there's a sub-regulation under that act, which is the General Machinery Regulations. That General Machinery Regulations gives guidelines that say if you have a factory or you've got a mine and that mine consumes so much energy, kilowatts, or you have a workplace and in that workplace you generate so much megawatts or megavolt amperes of electricity, then you need to appoint. So I'm not going to get into the details, but it's coming from that law. So that is why it is needed. And then that regulation also explains that you must appoint a competent person. But then it further defines that a competent person is someone who's got this experience, who's got this. But the simplest of, or the summary of all of that, it is someone who has a GCC. So as soon as you have a GCC, then you are considered a competent person who can be appointed to oversee machinery. Okay, I think I've covered enough there. That is why it is needed. So let's get on the most important part. I think most people are interested in this part. How do you go about getting this GCC thing? Okay, it's a bit of a long process. It's not so quick, but it is worth the journey. So there are a number of GCCs. Let me just cover that briefly before I get to how you go about getting it. As I stated already, you've got mines and you've got factories. So you've got GCC for mines and GCC for factories. The processes are very similar, but there are differences. I've done the one for factories, so I will dwell more on the GCC factories. But the most important thing, you must have a qualification in electrical or mechanical engineering. The age, you must be 23 years and above. The experience, you must have at least 2 years experience before even attempting a GCC. And then there's a number of exposure, there's an amount of exposure in industry that you need to have. So those are just the key things. But if you need further information on this topic, I would advise you to check the Department of Labor website. They have a document, 40-page document that details the requirements. But I'll also share it on the description of this video, so that you can just click on the link and then you get that document. Then it gives you all the details. It's going to be a similar process for mine engineers or GCC engineers. Fine. So you've got two classes now: GCC factories, GCC mines. But then when you get to GCC mines and GCC factories, let's take for about factories, because the mine is the same. Factories, you've got the electrical engineers competency certificate, and you also get mechanical engineers competency certificate. All right. So obviously, if your background qualification and your background experience is mechanical, it makes sense to do the one for mechanical engineers, the same for electrical. But it is possible to have both. It is possible to cross over. Let's say someone who's got an electrical background, but because of his work exposure, he is more involved in mechanical equipment, they can go and do the GCC mechanical. Because at the end of the day, both guys write the same exam. The exam is the same. It's just that there's a part of exam whereby there are sections, optional questions. So an electrical engineer will likely go to the electrical questions, and then the mechanical engineer will likely go and answer electrical questions, but it is not compulsory. Okay, so how do you go about getting it? I think the first and the most important thing, at least there are three ways to go about it. There are guys who've studied at the university, the traditional universities, not University of Technologies. So those guys, they've done BSc engineering, or they've done a BEng, a Bachelor of Engineering. So most of those guys, they can just, after you have more than 2 years experience, you can just apply straight at the Department of Labor. And if they assess your qualifications and they look at your modules and they say, okay, fine, you have everything that is needed, then they will issue you with an acceptance letter. You are accepted as a candidate to go write the actual GCC exam. And then after writing the GCC exam, you pass it, you submit your results, and then you get your certificate. That is the shortest one and the sweetest one. But then there are guys who studied at the University of Technology. They've done a national diploma or a BTech, or lately an advanced diploma. Or there are even guys who studied at a FET college like me. They've done N5, N6, N4 to N6, and then they've got a trade test and a number of experiences as an artisan. It's also possible. But for these two guys, which is University of Technology and the college graduates, there's usually additional requirements required. They are stated in the document that I mentioned earlier. But in short, you may be coming from an electrical background, but then will need you to do some mechanical modules so that your knowledge is broader. You don't have only electrical engineering knowledge, but you also have got some mechanical engineering knowledge. The same for someone who studied mechanical, they will need to do some electrical subjects. Then once they do all those electrical subjects, and then they can submit an application the same way as the guy who did BSc and PhD. The same for University of Technology, they can do additional modules. Then after doing additional modules, they are required to submit the application. But there's something I learned, I think I learned it a bit late. It is also possible to just apply. Let's say I finished my qualification in electrical engineering. I look through the document, I see they listed a number of additional modules. But I can just send my application, even though I've got electrical subjects only. Send my application to the Department of Labor, pay the application fee, submit all the required documents, and then then it's gonna be the Department of Labor that tells me which modules to add. Because sometimes if you follow the document, you'll find that there are modules that you want to add, and then when you apply, you find out that you didn't really need to do them because, let's say maybe there is an equivalent subject that you did somewhere else. I'll give you an example. There is a module called Supervisory Management. It's done at N4, N5, and N6. But if somewhere else, maybe you attended a university course and you did engineering management, I'm not saying it's a direct replacement, but you will find that the Department of Labor will say you don't need to do supervisory management. So you've got nothing to lose if you pay the application fee, apply, and let them evaluate your qualifications and let it be the department that tells you which modules to add. I think that's a better way because now whatever you're doing, you are sure. And the nice thing is that you will not need to reapply. Once you finish whatever modules after the evaluation and they told you that, okay, you need to do ABC, when you resubmit those modules, you won't need to pay the application fee again. So the application fee is paid once off. Okay, without saying too much, guys, let me just be more specific. So the most important things is your mainstream qualification, which is your diploma, your N6, and then in addition to that, the experience. You have to have work experience. That experience must be documented. When I applied, it was just a two-page document that explains the last 2 years of my experience. I don't have to explain the last 10 years, just the last 2 years or the 2 years that you feel like is relevant to the GCC, like working on boilers, working on compressors, working on equipment, working with transformers, working with machinery, working in an environment that is relevant to what the GCC requires. You do that letter of experience, you let your manager sign it, it can be on a company letterhead, a formal letter. There are templates on the Department of Labor. There are templates available that shows you how you can document that letter, just to put in your experience. Then after the letter, there's also a letter that it's a letter of sobriety, meaning it's a letter that tells you that you are a person of sober habits. It can also be from your manager that says, okay, this guy, I know him because you're going to be a supervisor of machinery. You need to be a person of sober habits, not someone, because you are responsible ultimately for other people that are using that machinery. You become a head of engineering or a plant engineer or a section engineer or a maintenance manager. So all the people that are going to be working on that machinery, their health and safety becomes your duty. So that is important that to be a person of sober habits. And then there's an application form. It's quite straightforward. It's name, surname, experience, qualification, and then the application fee. I think then the sixth one will be certified copies of your qualifications, and then you submit these documents as a hand delivery to the Department of Labor. Okay, so let's go again. It's your mainstream qualification, which is, okay, I've got a degree, I've got a diploma in engineering, I've got 2 years experience, I'm older than 23 years old, I've got a letter that shows that I'm a person of sober habits, I've got a letter that shows my work experience, and then I attach the proof of all other qualifications. And it's important that all the qualifications that you have, your marks are greater than 50. Okay. I think I've covered the most important part. So that's what. Then when you take that, you take all those documents, you put them in an envelope, you send them to the Department of Labor, and then you wait. They usually take longer to respond, in some cases as long as 1 year, but I think the best thing you can do about that is to call them, get their email addresses, follow up via an email, and also call them. Maybe before I got my letter, I was calling them every second week just to follow up. And then once you get your letter, some people have gotten them, like the shortest period, I would say maybe 2 months, 3 months of getting a letter. Some people are, I would say, a bit lucky, they get it quicker, but some people have waited as long as 1 year. But the best thing to do is to follow up. So after they've responded, they will give you either one of two responses. They can say, you meet all the requirements, here's your letter of acceptance, go and register at the college and write the GCC exam. Or they can say, your letter has been received, but then you need to go and do ABC modules before reapplying again. Those are the only two options that you're going to get. Let's say now you get the first one. It's easy then if you get the first one, which is that's all we want to get to. You got a letter of acceptance, it's telling you go and write your exams. Then you will look for a college. There are a number of colleges in South Africa that are authorized to administer the exams. So you get a number of colleges, but what is important, there are two exams. There's an exam that is based on plant knowledge, which is it's gonna test your mechanical, technical skills, your engineering skills. You're gonna be covering things like boilers, fluid mechanics,